Eric is building a swimming pool at his own house, but this isn't where the story actually starts. 3 years ago, he and his friend Johann came up with a challenge that sounded almost impossible. They decided they were going to build their own place from the ground up, start to finish, with just the two of them. They never claimed to be experts. In fact, far from it. But over time, Eric learned what it really takes to build something with your own hands, step by step, mistake by mistake, and without giving up when things got tough. They excavate the ground to a 4 by 7 meter area. Then, a 20 centimeter layer of gravel is spread across the entire surface to help with drainage and prepare the base for the slab. Once it's covered with a polyethylene sheet, he lays down 2 layers of mesh. He places the reinforcement every 25 centimeters, matching the layout of the concrete blocks. The spacing really matters. On a 7-meter structure, being off by even a centimeter or 2 can throw everything out. Instead of tying the bars, he welds them. It's faster, and it keeps everything from shifting out of place. They go with self-leveling concrete. Just like the name suggests, it spreads out and levels itself. It's mixed with special additives that help it flow smoothly and settle on its own. Once it's poured and vibrated, it naturally finds its level. In the end, it forms a solid slab of 20 centimeters thick. Once the slab is in place, they apply a curing product over the surface. It forms a thin protective film that slows down how fast the concrete dries. That's important, because if it dries too quickly, it can crack or shrink. They water the slab for 3 days straight. No cracks, no issues. It turns out just right. After that, they move on to sanding. The goal here is to open up the pores and get rid of that curing layer they applied earlier, since it leaves a slightly greasy film. Once that's done, the slab gets a good wash with water. Prepping the surface like this makes sure the next layers will stick properly and hold over time. They move on to installing the drain around the pool. They start by laying a geotextile fabric at the bottom, almost like a sleeve. Then the drain pipe goes inside it, wrapping around the entire pool. From there, it's all connected to the decompression well, so any water can be properly directed away. Eric cuts the first section of the drain, lays down the geotextile, adds the connectors, and sets the pipe in place. The idea is simple. If water starts to build up, it filters through the drain that runs all around the pool, then flows into the system and makes its way to the well. If the level gets too high, a pump kicks in and pushes it away. It's a smart setup, and it helps protect the structure from pressure building up underground. The first row of blocks is finally going up. Before anything is set in place, they apply a latex-based bonding primer on the slab. It helps everything grip properly, even after all the sanding and surface prep. The alignment is spot on, the reinforcement bars are exactly where they should be, and all that careful planning with the layout clearly pays off in the end. One row is almost done, with 5 more still to go. Instead of working with traditional string lines, they handle it more like tilers. Rigid guides keep everything straight and in place, making the whole process more precise and controlled as they move forward. The joints are filled and carefully leveled out, making sure the thickness stays consistent everywhere. It's a small detail, but it helps keep the whole structure uniform and solid. The next day, they move on to the second row. First comes the reinforcement, angles and steel bars. The steel is crossed for strength, one running from the outside in and the other in the opposite direction. They use two 10mm bars, sometimes 3, but any more than that would start to create unnecessary thickness. Vertical bars are placed every 1.5 meters to keep everything stable. The weather makes everything more complicated. It creates challenges at every step. The sun is shining one moment, and then heavy rain comes out of nowhere. Everything around the soil is soaked. It's been raining, and in a few places the ground has even given way, letting water collect inside the excavation. Work has to stop right there. To try and control the situation, they add protective plastic around the edges, something that really should have been done from the beginning. The horizontal steel bars are set into the blockwork for reinforcing the structure. Then, the mortar is poured into the hollow blocks, filling everything up. Little by little, the separate blocks start to feel like one solid piece. At the same time, provisions for lighting are built into the structure. These housings are set in place to later receive the underwater LED or halogen fixtures, so everything is already prepared for the lighting installation down the line. The wide-mouth pool skimmer is built right into the wall as the structure goes up. It's set at a precise height so that once the pool is filled, the water level sits about halfway up the opening, right where it needs to be to work properly. The skimmer plays a key role in keeping the water clean. As water is pulled in, it catches anything floating on the surface, leaves, insects, even oils, before they have a chance to sink and dirty the pool. Work now shifts to the beach area, the shallow entry that will shape both how the pool looks and how it's used. The holes are drilled, and Fisher hybrid connectors are used to anchor the steel bars into place. These fixings lock everything in securely, so the new section ties in properly with the existing wall and behaves like one solid piece. The beach platform isn't just there for looks. It makes the pool far more practical and comfortable to use. It creates a gentle, shallow entry into the water, so instead of stepping straight into the deep end, the transition happens gradually, almost like walking into the sea. It also becomes a natural spot to relax. Sitting, lying back, or simply staying partially in the water feels easy and comfortable without needing to swim. Visually, it makes a difference too. That soft, gradual slope gives the pool a cleaner, more modern feel and helps the whole space look more open and inviting. The cavity of the platform is filled with solid, non-compressible materials. Layers of rubble, gravel, and broken blocks are carefully placed to build it up. Soil is kept out completely. Over time, it tends to compact and settle, which can lead to cracks or movement in the finished surface. That's exactly what they're trying to avoid. Here comes the next step. Building the frame along the perimeter and around the beach platform, getting everything ready for the concrete pour. Additional reinforcement is installed inside the slab to make sure it won't shift under pressure. Instead of relying on a single layer of bars, everything is doubled, creating a more stable structure that can handle the load without moving. They wrap up the small details, leveling and vibrating the concrete so it settles the way it should. Everything is smoothed out carefully, step by step. In the end, the alignment with the boards comes out perfect, leaving a clean, precise finish. They start stripping the formwork while the concrete is still in that delicate phase where any weak spot or sudden movement could cause damage. It leaves very little room for mistakes. Still, everything holds. Eric and Johann are building the steps. Each one is about 28 centimeters, which works well for a pool like this. They're placed right into the corner, with the contours carefully shaped to match the design. Even though the form is set, everything is still reinforced before the concrete goes in. From a construction point of view, building the steps in a corner actually makes things simpler. The formwork can be fixed against two existing walls, which helps keep everything straight and reduces the amount of support needed. Everything works together as one solid piece instead of separate elements. Waterproofing work starts now, and it's one of the most important stages of the build. A cement-based waterproofing mortar is used for this phase. It acts as a hydrophobic coating, forming a dense mineral layer that bonds directly to the concrete. The goal is simple: keep everything sealed long-term. Thermal insulation is added next in the construction process using rigid extruded polystyrene panels, commonly known as XPS. These panels are chosen for a reason. They're strong under pressure, don't absorb much water, and provide excellent thermal resistance. That makes them ideal for being buried and constantly exposed to moisture without breaking down over time. The water is kept at roughly 28 to 30 degrees Celsius, while the surrounding soil usually sits much lower, around 8 to 12 degrees. The purpose of this layer is to reduce heat loss between the warm pool water and the colder ground around it. The space between the excavated soil and the insulation boards is filled with gravel. It's done on purpose, creating a stable buffer zone around the insulated shell. Gravel is the material of choice here because it drains freely, doesn't compress, and stays stable under pressure. The cavities that are intentionally created within the insulation system are now filled with reinforced concrete. These aren't random empty spaces left behind. They're planned structural zones, designed from the start to become part of the load-bearing system. Steel rebars are placed inside, turning these sections into rigid structural elements. Work now moves on to installing the utility networks, starting with digging trenches that'll carry everything the pool needs to function: power, hydraulic lines for circulation and filtration. But this stage comes with its risks. Not properly protected networks can lead to serious issues later: damaged cables, leaks, or difficult repairs once everything is buried. Because once it's covered up, there's no easy way back. The team moves on with the hydraulic setup, starting to install reinforced flexible PVC pipes made for pool systems. These pipes are chosen for their durability. They can handle internal pressure without issues and are less likely to crack over time, even with ground movement or changes in temperature. It's the kind of material that's meant to last once everything is buried and out of reach. Color-coded flexible supply lines are used, each one assigned a specific role in the pool's hydraulic system. The blue pipes mark the cold water routes. Here, they act as the fresh water fill line that brings water into the pool when needed. The red pipes handle the return of heated water, helping keep the pool at a stable and comfortable temperature. Eric decides to build a technical cabin near the pool. It will hold the pump system along with the filtration and control equipment, keeping all the technical components in one protected, centralized space. The area is first covered with gravel, then a reinforcement mesh is installed for strength. After that, concrete is poured to form the slab, creating a solid base for the cabin. Since this space is purely technical, the build is kept simple and practical, with the focus on protecting the equipment inside. Even so, it still needs a proper layered structure. The ground preparation, slab, and finishing all work together to keep the cabin dry, stable, and resistant to weather over time. The technical cabin acts as the central hub of the entire pool system, bringing all the hydraulic and electrical controls together in one protected space. Inside, everything is laid out in a compact and organized way. The circulation and filtration equipment are installed so they can run efficiently, be monitored easily, and be maintained without complications. The cabin also brings together the main hydraulic manifolds, where all the water lines are split and managed. This is where the connections come in for the skimmers, return jets, drainage points, and any extra systems like the cleaning circuit. At each junction, valves are installed to control the flow, isolate different parts of the system, and make maintenance possible without having to drain the whole pool. On the electrical side, the cabin houses the main control panel that runs the whole system. Inside, there are circuit breakers, timers, relays, and safety switches that manage everything from the pumps to the lighting and any heating equipment. As the pool includes extras like underwater lights, heating, and automation, their controls are also brought together here. The technical cabin really acts like the engine room of the pool. That's why, even though the structure itself is fairly simple, it still needs solid protection. Waterproofed, well insulated, and built to keep moisture and outside conditions from affecting the equipment inside. After a few rainy days, the team gets back to work. They decide to start with the waterproof rendering. But first, everything that could be damaged needs to be protected, especially the pool's return outlets. Before moving forward, the whole area has to be carefully cleaned, clearing away all the buildup from the past months. There's already a feeling that swimming season isn't too far off anymore. A specialized waterproofing system is now chosen for the final protective layer of the pool shell. It's a high-performance cement-based mortar, designed specifically for structures that stay in constant contact with water and are under continuous pressure. Its job is to form a tough, impermeable barrier that keeps water from seeping into the reinforced concrete while also protecting it from chemicals and long-term wear. The team goes with a liquid membrane made for pool structures, applied in 3 layers. The first coat is mixed with water so it can work almost like a primer. Then, the second and third layers go on pure. No dilution, no adjustments. Just a thicker, more solid application that slowly builds up into a continuous waterproof skin over the entire surface. Even with the tight space and the complexity of the hydraulic and filtration setup, the technical room slowly comes together in a clean and organized way. Now, most of the plumbing work is already in place. Everything is routed, connected, and starting to look like a complete system. Only the electrical connections are left now, which will be finished later. Finally, the weather is dry again, and Eric and his team can move on to tiling. They're using 15 by 15 tiles for the floor. It's a stone effect finish with natural-looking variations that give it a spa-like feel. The surface has a really nice mix of tones, soft blues, warm yellows, and subtle color shifts that make it look almost alive. They're working with a flexible adhesive, a 3-hour setting glue. The timing matters, especially with the weather still unpredictable. If rain comes in, at least the adhesive will already have set. It's a product made for demanding conditions, suitable for both indoor and outdoor flooring, and even for swimming pools. As they work, the alignment is constantly checked with a straight edge. They keep the joint spacing at around 4 millimeters, making sure everything stays consistent as the tiles go in. The idea is simple. Since epoxy will be used later, the joint needs to be clean and open enough so the material can really penetrate deep and create a solid, full fill. Pool tiling is never just about appearance. It's really about how the surface will perform over time. Things like durability, water resistance, and chemical exposure all play a big role in the choice of materials. Porcelain tile used here is strong, dense, and non-porous, which means it doesn't absorb water and holds up well against the chemicals used in pool maintenance. The next day is an important one, epoxy joints. Since this is a submerged pool environment, epoxy is the best option available. It's built to handle constant water exposure and long-term chemical resistance. Before anything starts, everything is cleaned thoroughly. Scraped, vacuumed, checked again. It has to be completely spotless. They're using a specific epoxy system in a gray tone mixed with resin and hardener. Once it's mixed, the clock starts ticking. There's only about 45 minutes of working time before it begins to harden. After that, there's no going back, no water, no adjustments, nothing. If something goes wrong, it can't be fixed on the spot. It has to be removed and redone completely. That's why careful measuring is so important from the start. The timing matters too. The weather is good in the afternoon, but storms are on the way. So the goal is to work fast and stay ahead of it. Even if rain comes after 6 or 7 hours, it won't really affect the work anymore. The surface will already have its protective layer in place. Now the focus shifts to the stairs. For the pool surfaces, they go with 30 by 60 tiles. It's a choice that simply looks cleaner and more balanced. But as the work progresses, small adjustments are needed. Nothing dramatic, just a few alignment differences and tricky cuts here and there. In some spots, things are off by just a couple of millimeters, so every piece has to be carefully corrected as they go. Instead of using metal trims, they go with a 45-degree beveled edge. In a submerged environment, metal can end up being a weak point over time. Corrosion, potential leaks, and all the problems they're trying to avoid. The bevel keeps the finish clean and simple, and in the long run, it's just a more durable solution. While the pool walls are receiving their waterproofing layers, work continues on the beach platform. Here, they're laying 15 by 15 centimeter tiles, matching the finish of the lower interior of the pool. It's a deliberate design choice. keeping everything visually connected so the beach area and the main basin feel like one continuous space. The days are dry, actually, really hot but productive. When stepping back and looking at what's been done, it almost doesn't feel real. All that work, piece by piece, is slowly coming together, and that's what building a pool is really like. Putting in the hours today so that tomorrow everything lines up just right. The team uses spacers to keep everything evenly spaced, and the alignment is checked constantly as they move along. A small detail shows up, but it makes a big difference: modern reusable spacers. Instead of the old type that would get stuck in the adhesive and have to be cut out the next day, these can simply be removed once the tiles are set. They reach the tricky part, the cuts. This is where things slow down. Every tile has to be measured, marked, and cut precisely to fit around edges, corners, and all the small, irregular areas. There's no room for guesswork here. One bad cut and the whole line can be thrown off. This section is almost complete now. There's a real sense of progress. One step done, the next already starting. Now it's time for the epoxy joints. Epoxy joints are one of the most technical parts of the whole process. It's not a one-person job, it takes a team. One applies the material, another spreads it, someone follows behind to clean, and another keeps an eye on everything to make sure it's done right. On walls, it gets even more challenging. Gravity starts working against you, and the epoxy doesn't stay in place the same way it does on flat surfaces. It moves, it slides, and it has to be handled more carefully. That's why working on horizontal areas, like the pool floor, is always easier. The material stays where it's put, giving more control and a cleaner result. Once the epoxy is applied, the whole surface has to be cleaned again. Special cleaning solutions are used first to remove any residue left behind. Then, machines come in, with rotating brushes and water to go over the entire pool area. It's a careful process. Everything is rinsed thoroughly, making sure no film or traces are left behind until the surfaces are completely clean. Before filling the pool with water, the whole technical setup is put in place. The filtration tank is filled with glass media instead of sand. All the hydraulic connections are checked. An electrolysis system is also installed to generate chlorine for water treatment, and the salt levels are adjusted to keep the system running properly. The pool is finally filled with water. The filtration system is switched on, and the pressure gauges are checked to make sure everything is running smoothly. Water begins to move through the pipes, circulating through the system for the first time. In the end, what stands there is a fully functional swimming pool, but it feels like much more than that. It's the result of months of effort, problem-solving, weather delays, and long days of physical work. And when everything is finally finished, there's this quiet moment. What started as an idea has turned into something real, now ready to be used, shared, and enjoyed. From the excavated soil to a finished creation, this is just one story. Subscribe to Macarium and be part of the next one. Your ideas might shape what we build next.